Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this very special webinar with Lily and Barbara Kingsolver. I know many of you know me. It's great to have so many of our supporters joining us today. My name is Camilla Fox, and I'm the founder and executive director of Project Coyote. And I was deeply honored when asked to review an early draft of Lily and Barbara's new children's book, Coyotes Wild Home, which is the subject of today's webinar. And I also would love to give a shout out to Amelie and Dana Bushwald of the Griffin Press for publishing this book, and really for all that they do to raise awareness and appreciation for wild animals through their beautifully illustrated children's books. I believe their press, the Griffin Press tagline says it all, a voice for the voiceless. And I also want to make a shout out to artist Paul Maroka, whose gorgeous paintings make Coyotes Wild Home just a visual, sumptuous delight. And before I introduce our special guests, I want to mention that we will save some time at the end for Q&A. So if you want to add your questions into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, we will try to get to as many of those as we can before the hour is out. We're also recording this webinar, and we will be sharing it with all who registered. It will also be permanently available on our website and shared through all of our social media channels. So with no further ado, I want to introduce our special guests, Lily and Barbara Kingsolver. Lily grew up in Southwest Virginia, where the Appalachian Mountains ignited her passion for wild creatures and the places where they live. She has a background in environmental science with an emphasis on herpetology, as you can see in her background there, and is currently working on a graduate degree in environmental education. She's a wildlife educator and is currently working at an AZA-based nature preschool in Florida. And she shared with me that her favorite part of her job is cultivating compassion for animals, including snakes and coyotes, who are, as she said, deeply important and misunderstood. Coyotes Wild Home is her first published book. Barbara Kingsolver is a writer of best-selling novels, poetry, and nonfiction. Her work is widely translated and has earned her literary awards and a devoted readership at home and abroad. In 2000, she was awarded the National Humanities Medal, our country's highest honor for service through the arts. She began her career as a scientist with undergraduate and graduate degrees in evolutionary biology. Barbara shared with me that one of her long-term goals as a writer is to bring important principles of ecology to non-scientists. So explaining the importance of keystone predators to 6-year-olds is a career high for her. This is also her first book for children. Welcome, Lily and Barbara. We're delighted and deeply honored to have you both here today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thrilled. So I'm going to start with, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying, I admire your work so much. I feel like we should be interviewing you.
Oh, thank you. It's a delight, truly, to connect and to have read your book and share it here. So Lily, this first question is for you. I know many of Project Coyote supporters who are joining this webinar would be interested to hear what inspired you to write a children's book with a focus on coyotes, and just to share a bit about your experience of writing a book with your mother, who's such a prolific writer.
Wow. Well, the opportunity came from Mom. The background of the story, I might actually invite Mom to start this story, because it really does start with her and an invitation she got. And it followed so naturally that, Mom, do you want to start that?
Sure. Emily with Griffin Press sent a letter to me. I think she knew that I had studied coyotes because of my previous novel, Prodigal Summer, which is about a coyote biologist. And so she contacted me, inviting me to join the series that they have of children's books, Voices for the Voiceless. She sent me the previous one, which is called A Warbler's Journey, about a warbler and its migration from North to South America. It was a beautiful book. And she said, would you be interested in writing a book about coyotes for children? Well, I wrote a letter answering her saying, I love this idea. Coyotes really need better representation in children's literature. And I'm sorry, I can't write books for children. I've tried. People imagine that it would be, if you can write, a 500-page novel, you could write, an 8-page children's book. It's a different skill set. It's really more like poetry, but it's not exactly poetry either. It's a whole different skill set. And so in my letter, I said, I have no idea how to do this. I'm so sorry. I hope you can find someone who can. The letter was sitting on my table. I hadn't mailed it. This is a story of wonderful mother-daughter serendipity. The copy of Warbler's Journey and my regretful thank you, no thank you letter were sitting on the table, our kitchen table, when Lily came in. She lived very nearby at the time and said, "What's this?" And I explained, and she said, "Well, why wouldn't you?" And I said, "Coyote biology is really complicated. I can't imagine explaining that in a narrative for children." And Lily said, "What about this?" And she just rolled the whole story right out, right there and right then. And I said, "Lily, you should write this book." And she said,
Well, I said, what? I've never written a book, but mom convinced me. And I was so honored to be asked to be part of this. And Griffin Press was so kind to let me be part of this project, that, we sent them this proposal. And actually our proposal was way too long. They said, the book needs to be about half as long as this proposal. So we did work really hard to fit all those ideas into a small package. But it was really cool. It was especially cool to work with mom on this project because I had just started my master's program and moved away when it was, I think, the last month that I lived nearby that I saw this beautiful book on your kitchen table, and I saw the letter, and I said, "Mom, you have to do this." And so it's been a really wonderful way to connect since I've moved away. It's a reason to call each other every week, even when we're really busy, we have to do this because we're working together. And so it also helps that we like each other, and we want to talk to each other. But it's been so cool to have this connection and to be learning from each other. I've learned so much from mom during this process about books. I absolutely couldn't have done this without her. And I'm also very lucky to have spent a lot of time working with kids in a number of capacities, but mostly as an environmental educator. And so I've spent a whole lot of time with children's books, and it just felt like such a natural merging of books and nature and kids, which are three things that I love so much. And it just, like mom said, it really was a beautiful piece of serendipity. I feel so lucky.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I
Well-
love that it's brought you two together too, in many ways. That's I have a mother far away too, and opportunities to connect is special.
Well, I just want to add that we learned so much from each other, and I can't stress this enough. The book would not have happened without Lily. Lily brought to this a skill set, a capacity to package complicated ideas in a child size, in a size that would comfortably fit in a kid's head. It's a skill I don't have. I've learned so much from Lily. We worked together wonderfully. I think that I felt like Lily was more the writer and I was more the editor. She would do a draft and I would say, let's see how we can cut, 200 more words out of this. And we worked together a lot on the dialogue, sort of back and forth, making the dialogue feel natural and stuff. But it really did take both of us to make this book.
I feel and hear a series coming on. I hope it's not the last of your children's books. I think reaching young people is so important. And that's why we were so excited too. We're expanding our Keeping It Wild youth education outreach program, and we definitely want to integrate this book into that.
Thank you.
So yeah, Barbara, I'm going to shift to you. And you mentioned Prodigal Summer, which I have to say personally is one of my most favorite books, along with Poisonwood Bible. But in that, I know you celebrate wildness and the preciousness and value of the natural world. You also address issues around our sometimes conflicted relationship between people and with wildlife and wild nature. I know too that you and your husband live on a farm in the mountains of southwestern Virginia, a home that you share with sheep, chickens, and countless wild creatures, including coyotes. And I'm wondering if you could share a bit about your personal experiences with living in a region that may not be as hospitable and welcoming to coyotes and other wild neighbors.
That's a really good question. We are farmers. We're real farmers, not just hobby farmers. We have a flock of sheep. We do have chickens. In fact, I was asking Lily this morning, do you have any, I was thinking about why are coyotes so important to us? Do you have any good memories of coyotes from childhood? And she brought one up that I'm actually gonna we're gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna invite Lily to tell this story because I think it's germane to your question.
Yeah, so like mom said, we were kind of exchanging ideas, coming up with coyote stories we might tell. And I realized that I do have this memory that is a very intense memory, and I hadn't really connected it to anything. But the more I think about it, the more I think it was very impactful. So like mom said, they live on a farm, and I loved growing up on a farm. I'm really lucky that I understood food systems really early because they made an effort to teach me about food systems and the fact that we're omnivores and we harvested our chickens and understood that we give them nutrition and they give us back nutrition. It's I think that it is important for kids to start understanding those things. And so we had our flock of chickens and we did eat some of them, and I understood that we were predators. And one day I was inside reading and I heard my chickens outside making a really loud noise in the front yard. And I loved
You were how old? You were how old?
this would have been probably right after we moved to Virginia. So I would have been 7 or 8.
Okay.
And so I was inside reading. I heard this kerfuffle in the yard, and I ran out, and there was a coyote there with my rooster Saffron in its mouth. And I loved all my chickens, as individuals, and they all had names. And Saffron was a mean little rooster, but I still loved him with all my heart. And he was in this coyote's mouth, and I didn't know what I was running out into the yard to get into. And all of a sudden I was face to face with this coyote holding my chicken. And I'm sure the face I made and the face the coyote made were the same face. We were like, oh no, what happens now? Neither one of us expected to get that far. And then after what was probably 2 seconds, it dropped Saffron and ran away. And I had this moment of recognition that I was not a formidable 7-year-old. I'm still not a formidable person, but I was a small kid, and I had this moment of being face to face with another predator, and it saw me as the scarier predator. It was like, you hear all the time, and we tell kids, it's more afraid of you than you are of it, but it's so hard to conceptualize that. And I think that was a moment where I really connected. I saw that we were sort of in the same place in the food chain, and that it was responding to me with fear and with like it didn't want to mess with me. It wasn't anything to be afraid of. And that's a memory that I carry with me and think of a lot.
And as your mom, I'm really glad it didn't mess with you. but you knew. I mean, you knew you weren't going to approach it. You did just from across the barnyard. You had this moment of this face off and you won. But what the moral of this story is that we're in competition with predators as farmers. And I'm really aware of that and sympathetic for the fact that it's historically, as people are working to make a living by growing animals, they have to deal with the predatory pressure of other animals around them. So I think that this historical sort of animosity between humans and carnivores is understandable, and I try really hard, both as a novelist and a writer and as a neighbor, to understand where other people are coming from. So I get the fact that around here, most people, when you say coyote, they say shoot him. The best coyote is a dead coyote, and so forth. So I understand that that we have a lot of educational work to do around this, but it's also really important to understand that when we work within the system, we can still we can well we can we can win this face off, as Lily explained. No, I don't go out there and face off the coyotes every night to keep them from eating my sheep, but I have a guard animal that does. We have a donkey. Her name is Sally. She's a guard donkey, and people who don't understand don't know donkeys kind of laugh, like, what would a donkey do when she meets a fierce predator? And I'll tell you, she kicks its butt. She's really fierce, and she's very effective, and because she's an herbivore, it's a great system, because she moves around through the different pastures with the sheep. She's always with them. She knows they're her job, and she kicks the tar out of any coyote. Or we also, actually, a bigger problem for us are feral dogs that come in packs. And she, in the more than 20 years that we've kept sheep here, the only time we've ever lost lambs to coyotes were a couple of occasions when we mistakenly pastured the lambs separately from Sally, so she wasn't able to protect them. And the shocking thing is, they disappeared like that in the middle of the afternoon. So it reminded us the coyotes are all around us. They have lots of things to eat. They don't have to have our lambs, and so we organize our farming in a sustainable way, so that we have protections. And so this is, these are conversations that we can have with our neighbors to help bring bring an understanding. We're not living on the frontier anymore. We have options. And we can raise animals, and we can also, if we lose one lamb every year to predation, that's an acceptable loss, honestly, in the larger scheme of things. I would rather accept that loss of that one lamb than to have some kind of ridiculous extermination program trying to get rid of all the coyotes in the neighborhood, because guess what? That wouldn't work anyway. We know that. And so just helping to educate people about, well, both things: how we can coexist with predators, and second of all, how important they are. Everybody around here knows, honestly, a bigger problem for farmers, especially vegetable farmers, are the deer. And that's the predator that causes the most damage here. And we have way too many deer, because the historic predator of deer, the historic keystone predator of this region, was the red wolf. That's the animal that the what do you call it, at the trophic level, the upper trophic level, that kept the whole system in balance, was taken out by the early Europeans, who came in and killed every wolf they could see. That caused all kinds of problems. So just education is the answer to everything. Explaining to people, you're not liking all these deer that eat everything in sight. Coyotes are helping with that. And you mentioned Prodigal Summer. At the time I was writing that novel, which was nearly 20 years ago, I did a lot of research. I read, all of the current scientific literature on coyotes, especially having to do with why they were moving into this region. We live in Southern Appalachia, as you mentioned, in Southwestern Virginia. And coyotes only arrived here in probably the late 80s, early 90s. So they're new here. They've moved, we know that they're originally they were in the southwestern deserts, and that they have migrated across, in several directions, but there was a slow generational migration across Canada and then down south into these mountains. And at the time I was doing that research, there was this idea that was kind of an outlier idea, the notion that they might be moving into this region as a replacement, because they found the empty niche of the red wolf, that they were coming in to fill that ecological niche to restore the balance of the ecosystems here. Well, now 20 years later, that's not an outlier idea anymore. It's pretty well accepted by people who study coyotes, I believe, that the reason coyotes were sort of pressed to make this move was because they were replacing the predators that were extirpated from these regions, which is just a beautiful story, I think. And it tells us, we need these animals here. Nature knows best.
Nature knows best. That's well said. Thank you for sharing that. And absolutely, I was thinking also about Prodigal Summer and wildlife services and your mentioning of the agency, and wondering, you mentioned predator control as well. If you've had any experiences with the agency, if you have neighbors, like, we have so many supporters who are grappling with the fact that they appreciate and respect predators in their neighborhoods, and then they're surrounded by people who believe that a dead coyote is the best coyote, or wolf, or bear, or mountain lion.
Yeah.
So interested to hear any experiences there, and also your thoughts about how perhaps we can shift, those attitudes, and shift towards a more compassionate way of living with our wild neighbors. And that's for both of you.
Well, compassion comes. I think that education that begins early is really important, and probably the best kind. And I'll defer to Lily on that, who knows so much about it. I will just say that the most valuable, the most effective way for me to talk with my neighbors about this is just the practical fact that bounty hunts don't work, that killing coyotes makes more coyotes, because they are really smart and they have these really complex social systems and family systems, so that if the alpha female, from a group is taken out, then her sisters all begin to reproduce, which they didn't when she was in place. So they have this mechanism to compensate, and actually overcompensate when there is pressure on their populations. So study after study after study shows that if you shoot a coyote, you're probably going to get 2 back. And I have shared that information with lots and lots of people. And if because it's counterintuitive, so I have handy references that I can show them. And bounty hunting has never succeeded in reducing coyote populations. So that's the practical answer. For a longer term answer, I'm gonna ask Lily to talk about education and just how important it is to get these ideas to children early on.
Yeah. So I have lots and lots of thoughts about this. I'm getting my master's in environmental and informal science education, and I'm especially really interested in early childhood education. And I'm working with preschool age children in a nature preschool. And so I'm learning all these amazing things about environmental sensitivity and how early we need to start cultivating that, because kids are at 2 and 3 and 4 are absorbing lessons about nature all around them. And you're really setting the stage at that point for the rest of their lives, and their capacity for environmental literacy, environmental sensitivity. And no one is going to exhibit environmentally responsible behavior if they don't already have those values. But I'll also say, on the topic of educating people who maybe don't want to be educated necessarily, people who maybe have some anger at coyotes, or feel like the coyotes are their enemies. I've met a lot of those people. I used to work at a state park in Virginia, and I would have people come up to me and say, you should be proud. One time I had a guy say, you should be proud of me. I shot 10 coyotes last month. And first of all, I was like, do you not think aren't most park rangers on the side of the coyotes? Like, what did you think I was going to say about this? But also, not coming at him with anger, but saying, oh my gosh, you know what? I was just reading this thing about how if you shoot coyotes, more of them will come back. So probably that's not your best approach, like coming to somebody where they are and not preaching to them and not talking down to them. And it's the same with kids, teaching kids that they have the autonomy to make their own decisions about nature, to be safe in nature, to respect predators and give them space. I think, respecting the people you're educating is a huge deal. And I respect kids very much. And I respect, my neighbors who haven't had the opportunity to learn these things very much as well. Because I don't think anybody's trying to be malicious. I think a lot of people haven't had the opportunities to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Education is everything. And I just want to thank you for reaching the young people, because I'm a huge believer in, education and reaching young people when they're just thinking about the world, and when they're most impressionable, we can start to set some of those important values in there. So thank you for your work. And I hope we can do some work together with our Keeping It Wild Youth Education Outreach Program, which would be amazing. So I know your first book, targeting young people. For both of you, what do you hope, especially as scientists, both scientists with a lot of knowledge of apex predators, what do you hope to instill in young people in reading this book? And then how do you hope that they feel after reading it?
That's a good question. I think compassion is really at the core of it. I think what we're trying to instill is both the inherent value of species, the fact that coyotes have a right to exist by virtue of already existing, that everything has a place in this world, and it doesn't need to be doing something for you to have a place in the world. It just does. Everything does. Everything is so interconnected, and we are filling our own niche. We are animals very much, and we are living our lives as animals. And I think often we kind of remove ourselves from that. And so part of our focus with the book was positioning ourselves in juxtaposed to coyotes, juxtaposed to predators, and showing how much we have in common, and how we spend so much time working on extending compassion to other people. And I think it's really the same practice to work on extending compassion to fauna, and especially to fauna that isn't necessarily charismatic megafauna. We talk with my preschoolers all the time. I'm saying, can you think of a kinder, way to say that? Can you, I'm lucky to work at an AZA zoo, and if they see the crocodile and say, "Ooh, that's ugly," I say, well, can we think of another way to say that maybe, you'd say to a friend, or like, it looks really interesting, it looks really bumpy. I think compassion is very natural, and we're always working on extending more compassion to those around us. And so I think that's really at the core of the book for me. How about you?
Yeah, but I'm just going to say, this was the genius of Lily. The idea that she had immediately for this book that I think makes it work is it's a double narrative. It follows a day in two lives: a coyote pup that is being taken out of the den on its first hunt. It's because this is based in science. Coyotes and many other predators have to be taught. They have to learn to hunt. Their older relatives teach them. And for coyotes, that's a long process. It can take an entire summer, because it's, there's a lot of skills involved. So in our book, a coyote pup is going out into the forest to begin learning on its first hunt, and a little girl is being taken into the same forest by her grandpa on her first camping trip. And they have a lot of similar experiences. They have encounters that make them afraid. They have failures. They both try. The little girl tries to fish, so there's a conversation about, well, we're predators too. And she fails, and the coyote fails, and so the story helps kids and their parents understand, sort of, you go into both the life of the little girl and the little coyote, and kind of see the world through both of their eyes, and see the similarities. I think that children's books, as a mother who's read many books many times to my kids, I understand that children's books educate adults too. And I think, we were really conscious of making this a book that children would love, and that parents, that adults and grandparents would enjoy reading. And also, it's just amazing how subtle a lot of these ideas come to us in almost subconscious ways. We were thinking, Lily and I, about all of the negative stereotypes, the big bad wolf, the three bears, just how that sort of that characterization of the wolf as the villain. I mean, you just see the Disney villainous wolf, right? In your mind's eye. We don't even know always where these ideas are coming from. So we thought, what a great opportunity to create to counter, to give predators some better PR in children's literature. It's a way to move the culture. We carry stories. I grew up hearing about the big bad wolf, and that's a narrative that's just kind of baked into me. So it's really a pleasure to start to turn the ship.
I love it. Wouldn't it be amazing if those stories, I think about all those little Red Riding Hood stories that we grew up on, if this next generation remembers these kinds of stories. I remember Babar and, Charlotte's Web, and that we're so encountered to these other ones. And I feel like we're shifting that needle, and this kind of book will definitely help us get there. Thank you both. I'm gonna take some questions here. We have several flowing in from our guests here. So this is one from Katie, who asked, Barbara, can you tell us about the moment you fell in love with Coyotes? And she shares mine was reading Prodigal Summer.
Oh, that's lovely. I appreciate that. I think in fact, I'm sure of this. It happened when I lived in Tucson. I grew up in Kentucky. We never heard or saw coyotes in my childhood. Coyotes to me were exotic. I knew of them, but I had never seen one until I moved to Tucson, Arizona, in my 20s. I lived there. And coyotes are so important in the American Southwest. They hold such an important place in the culture of the Diné, the Navajo people. Revere the coyote. He's a trickster. He's sort of a tricky guy, but he's not a bad guy. He's a trickster that you admire. And we get where this comes from, because coyotes are tricky. They're really smart. The fact that killing them doesn't reduce their numbers. They seem smarter than we are in some ways, maybe a lot of ways. And so, and sort of coyote iconography is everywhere in the desert Southwest, and so, and we saw them and we heard them. We were lucky to live outside of town in the desert. And so I'm sure Lily has very early memories of every night hearing the coyote songs, and their songs, the indigenous people call them song dogs. And I love that name because they do sing. And we learned the different kind. There's a kind of the kind of singing that tells you they're hunting, or that they have surrounded an animal. There are songs that are telling each other just hello, good morning, good night, I'm here. Just having them as neighbors gave me this profound appreciation for they're just part of the ambient world there. So, and actually one of the first newspaper I freelanced for when I was beginning my writing career was called The Coyote. It has this, the coyote tells stories. It sings across a long distance. It's just a really positive image that they have there. And I'm sure that, Lily has those memories. We felt lucky when we would see them hiking. We would often see them. We would see them in the yard. I had a dog that was half coyote. that happens in Tucson because coyotes would come into town and visit, um, and leave offspring. So I had a very interesting dog named Jessie who was mostly dog, but when the coyotes would howl at night, sometimes she would just like lose it and howl, and then she'd look around like, who did that? So I had a sort of coyote vibe in the house. It was just really positive. And so when I moved here, and because I'm really in my heart Appalachian, so are my kids, we really had to be back here. Um, I was really very excited to begin seeing them more and more. We don't hear them often. We know they're here all the time. They're more cryptic here. Somehow or other, they're quieter here. Um, um, but I'm always really excited when I see one and really happy. So it was kind of news to me to move to a place where they were just so, people had just this kind of built-in animosity. But I think it's changing. I really do.
Nice to hear that. Nice to hear that. We're trying to shift the paradigm, as you might
Yeah.
have heard. We're trying to ban wildlife killing contests in Virginia now. We've got
Yeah.
9 states, hopefully 10 very soon, and Virginia's on the docket. So hopefully we can work with you on that front.
We're happy to do that.
That'd be great. Thank you. So another question. This is from Celeste, who says, are there plans to translate your new book into other languages, especially for our English learning children? Especially for our English learning. Okay. Why don't we just start with the first part? Are there plans to translate your new book into other languages?
There
Yes.
are. We're not in charge of that. The agents and the publishers work on that. But I know that my French publisher, my French publisher who publishes my novels, got wind of this. I think I told him I couldn't do something because of this book, and he said, "Oh, well, have your publisher contact me. We have a great children's division, so I think the French translation is probably in the works, and I feel sure there will be others. I don't know exactly, because coyotes are a North American and Central American animal. I think a Spanish translation would make a lot of sense, but it's not just, I think that all the world is fascinated with North American things and and cowboy movies. So I think that there's probably a market for it, and we would really love to see that. I'm pretty sure it will happen.
Fantastic. This is from Maggie, who writes, Lily, I am sure you know the biophilia we are all born with that is suppressed in most children as they get older. It seems our work could help make sure children retain this love of nature we are all born with. How do you transmit this to the little ones?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we all, I was just talking to my professor actually yesterday about how when I go to a group of elementary schoolers and I go, let's find some bugs, they all go, yay. And then when I go to a group of high schoolers and say, let's find some bugs, they're not as into it. And I think that there's this shame that's kind of associated with biophilia, that we all have the don't touch muddy worms, don't get muddy, don't get in the creek. I think it's sort of thought of as a childish thing to want to pick up salamanders and frogs and be really into these little creepy crawly critters, and then later to extend that same interest to coyotes, to be into animals. It's thought of, I think, as sort of uncool and not I don't know, it's not thought of as an adult thing. And I think it's the most adult thing, to be compassionate and to understand the intricacies of our relationships with nature, and to understand where we fit into a food web. I think, leaves so much room to appreciate the other places in the food web and our competitors in the food web, to understand what coyotes are doing. We're so lucky that it's so easy for us to get food, that we can find our food everywhere. But coyotes, it's their whole entire job to find food. And, kids understand that. Kids understand that animals are working really hard to do things that we find so easy. And I think that just allowing kids to express their feelings, encouraging them to explore, to be interested in these things that aren't necessarily considered cool in high school. When I remember picking up bugs in college, when I went to college in a city, I found a cicada one day, a beautiful cicada on the sidewalk, and picked it up and showed all my friends, look at this beautiful cicada. And they were like, ew, Lily, put that, like at that point, it was not cool to be into nature and to be fascinated by these things. And I don't know exactly why that is, but I think just to do it yourself, and to model it for kids, to show how exciting it is to find a muddy worm sometimes, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think you can blame me for raising uncool kids.
I was going to blame you, Barbara. I was just going to say, I'm sure that was mothering and fathering.
Because I was the mom who said, play in the creek. Show me the turtle that you
Exactly.
found. As a mother, I think even aside from being a biologist, as a mother, it made so much sense to me to get the kids outside, because it never failed when my daughters were small, when they were fussy. It always worked to take them outside, especially under trees where they could look up and see sort of the leaves and the light. It just made sense to me to get the kids outside as much as possible. And then, so I took Lily on her first camping trip when I think she was weeks old. And I have this really funny memory of her. She was little and in her car seat, and she'd never even rolled over yet. So I thought it was safe to just leave her sitting there. And somehow she made her first move, and she kind of leaped out of the car seat. And I saw her go like face down in the dirt. And I picked her up, and her face was covered with dirt. And she had the biggest smile. And I just thought, okay, we've got that out of the way. We're not going to be afraid of dirt or getting dirty. I think, as parents, it's something that we can give our kids and ourselves, is that gift of getting outside wherever we live, where we're not all, I would say, lucky enough to live on a farm or in the wilderness, but there's always, when we lived in Tucson, I always took the kids to the cemetery because it was it was the greenest part of the city, and it had these beautiful old trees. And we're just Appalachians, as I said, in our hearts. We really like trees. But they were always so happy there, and I don't think they ever realized that we were in the presence of dead people. Just getting the kids outside however you can is a gift that will last them a lifetime. And also you are doing the future a favor by keeping that biophilia in your kids.
Thoroughly agree. And I will say, I grew up with a father who had me roll in dirt and just appreciate insects. I loved insects growing up. And I think just that that allowance of discovery and appreciation that I think is instilled and inherent. I think I think that compassion is what ultimately society pulls out, rips away from us sometimes. And so making sure that stays and just opening up the natural curiosity, I think, is super important.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. You don't have to invent it for your children. All you have to do is cultivate it. Keep it there. Appreciate it. They know. They know. You don't have to say, "Ooh, I hate bugs." You show that with your body language. So,
Exactly.
You can
always rescue the spiders out of the tub.
Exactly, with the paper cup and the card.
Yep.
And take them
Just did it this morning. 2 spiders.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Just those small things are huge things.
Big. Yeah. All right. A question from Peggy, who says, as someone who lives in Southwest Virginia, how can we best advocate for coyotes and bobcats in our state?
Well, you can give this book to a lot of children, it is so gorgeous. I want to Paul, because Paul isn't here, I just want to if I may,
please share some of the art. Absolutely. It's exquisite.
The book and show you how gorgeous this is my favorite page. Can you see? This is the only time where the humans and the coyotes almost meet. The coyotes are peering through the trees to see the little girl and her grandpa. It's just beautiful. Paul is a friend from way back. Actually, Paul and I have worked together since before Lily was born. We've known each other that long. And in the earliest days of my career as a freelancer, he and I did projects together, and he's done painted the jackets for several of my books. So we talked him into doing this, and we said, but he lives in Tucson. So we said, you have to see, this book is set in our Appalachian woodland. You have to see it. So he came out and spent a week with us photographing, sketching, saying, oh, wow, there's so many leaves on these trees. But he did a beautiful job of rendering this landscape and this gorgeous place and these gorgeous animals.
I have to say, when I saw the artwork, it was just exquisite. And I thought if we could put, one or two of his beautiful pages into a poster or something, it's uniquely beautiful. And I too have read the Warbler, the different Griffin Press books, and many of them are beautifully illustrated, but I think this one is exceptional.
Well, I'm sure that what you suggested could be arranged. I think that Paul would be delighted to work with you on a poster.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, this is a good follow-up. This is a question from Cammie, who says, I love the idea of gifting this book to so many of my younger relatives this holiday season. What do you imagine as the optimal earliest age for your book?
It's a little wordy. I would say not necessarily for preschoolers. Also, we know that around 5 is the age when kids can start understanding the nuance of issues like ecological issues. Under 5, they don't really have the capacity to understand. It's a very big idea, the idea of habitat loss and the destruction of the ecosystem of coyotes. That I think starts. I think 5 or 6 is the age where that starts being something you can understand and wrap your head around. And I think. Yeah, I would say 5 or 6, maybe 6.
Yeah, we read it to 5-year-old in our life, and he loved it. Around kindergarten, 1st grade is the age.
Perfect. Okay. Other questions coming in about your books. Where can we buy signed copies of your new book? Or is that possible? Will you be doing a tour? Will you be speaking in places?
So I'll go ahead and say Mom has worked very, very hard signing lots of books in her life. And as a result, she has a hand injury and she will not be able to sign books anymore. She can't.
Yeah, I can't. I have a hand condition actually and can't sign books anymore. I'm really sorry, but Lily can.
My hands are so
you can order this book. You can get it from your local bookstore. You can pre-order it now. You can go to the Griffin Press website, or I think both of us on our social media, both Lily and I, will have probably in our bio links where you can order the book. But your local bookstore would love to get it for you. And special for a really special occasion, you could mail the book to Lily or to me, but I'm going to say Lily, and she'll sign it for you. But we're not going to do any like bulk signing. We just feel like we put everything we wanted into the book, and it's a really special book.
Wonderful. Okay. We have some people are asking if you would be open to speaking in schools or with school librarians about these topics. And that's probably for you, Lily.
If possible, absolutely. All I have to say is, as I'm getting my master's and also a preschool teacher, so I don't have a lot of extra time. But as many of these things as I can do, I would love to. I love talking to kids about animals. That's, my favorite thing in the world. And it's incredible that I get to do that as a job and at school and, right now. So yeah, absolutely. I would love to if that opportunity presents itself. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'll just say to whoever wrote that, you can contact us and we can be the conduit here for any of those kind of requests.
And while travel to different places can be, can be very time consuming and also uses a lot of resources, but Zoom is wonderful. Just zooming into a classroom is a very efficient use of people's time and also doesn't use jet fuel.
Absolutely. That's why we love these webinars.
Yeah, I think one of the best things to come out of the pandemic is that everybody knows how to use Zoom. And we've come to understand that this is a really good way of connecting. We don't have to burn all that jet fuel all the time.
Precisely.
Now, and I'm not going to give it to any of you guys.
So, let me ask too, this is Barbara, I know you talk a lot about or write a lot about love, loss, connection, coexistence, and also the downtrodden, the underdogs, ecological themes. I'm wondering, when you think about predators, and again, I'm going back to Prodigal Summer, but what do you think are some of the lessons that we can learn about coexistence and compassion and coming to understand what we deem as other or less than? I know you talk a lot about Appalachians being treated as less than.
Yeah. I'm sorry, someone's coming to my door.
I have a dog coming to my door too, but I'm not going to answer the door.
Let me just, I'll be right back.
No problem. And Lily, if you want to jump in on any of that, feel free.
Sure. I mean, I think it comes back to compassion over and over. I think, to everybody we can, as much as possible, all of the animals we can, all of the people we can. I think compassion is a constant work of being a human. And I think, I know personally, I am always working on, being less judgmental, being kinder, being a better person in all kinds of ways, to the people around me and to the animals and plants around me. And it's kind of all connected, it's all the same respect.
I think it's important to understand that it's very natural for us to be suspicious of the other. I think when you think about how long we lived as humans, on the savannah, in social groups, really needing our tribe to survive, really needing to be very quick to judge as someone approaches, friend or foe. I think that's wired into us. I think we have to forgive ourselves for that as a starting point. And the wonderful thing about humanity and the years of work we've done to become what we like to think of as more civilized people is that we can overcome some of our these urges to judge and to hate someone who's other than us. It's the great human project, I think, to learn to appreciate the other, to appreciate someone who's lived a different life from me, who looks very different, who believes differently. It's work that I think about every day because I live among people who are, who often vote differently from me, but who are so, so kind and on whom I rely, for neighborhood love and kindness. So I think one of the magical ways that we can grow empathy is through reading books and reading books to kids. I think the thing that I love most about being a novelist is that it has the magical power. A novel has the magical power of letting you when you read a novel, you put yourself down on the night table and you go into another human brain, which is just incredible. You see through another person's eyes. That person's kids become your kids. Their worries become your worries. So you experience another life. And when you come back to yourself, you're changed by that. So I think that reading fiction for ourselves and reading books to children and raising readers who love books and appreciate books. And part of that is because they see us read. They see us go into a book and like love being there instead of our phone. That's modeling. You can say all you want, you should read books, but they're not going to do it unless they see you loving it. So I think that's how I feel like I fit in to the great human project of empathy is reading books, reading about other lives, including other species.
Beautifully said. Couldn't agree more. I think books sometimes underappreciated in this day and age of technology, and I think if we can bring young people up reading and appreciating and taking them out to wild nature, it will be a changed world. So thank you for that. Barbara, this is a question for you. I love all your books. I can't tell you how much I loved Deborah Copperhead, sorry. What idea for a book are you currently working on?
I can't really, it's hard to say. I have several cooking, but my project right now is promoting this one.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we hope we can continue to promote in any ways that we can. Just a beautiful book. I hope everyone who's listening here will consider getting copies, giving them away as gifts. We put the link on the thread. Thank you, Christopher. And I realize we're coming up on the hour. Any last thoughts that you want to share, comments, Barbara or Lily?
Thank you so much for having us. This has been so fun. And thank you also. I want to say that Camilla, I think this was already mentioned earlier in the hour, but she looked over our early work on the book, and we're so grateful for her expert advice and input. And just, I feel really lucky to have been connected to a network of people who really care about animals and care about cultivating compassion, like we've been talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. We're everywhere. There are a lot of us. And I guess the message I would want to leave us all with is not to give up hope. I mean, I know there's some days when we feel like humans have made such a mess of things, but what I think is, for the sake of Lily and for the sake of the next generation coming up, the people for whom we wrote this book, we don't get to give up. That's not an option. However thin and threadbare your hope may be, at the end of the day, you get up the next morning and you just put on a new one, because hope is a duty. It's not an option.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. And we deal with a lot of ugliness in our work for apex predators in this country. And what I always say is, you can just walk outside and see the beauty in your backyard, in your neighborhood, and it's there. And that for me is my antidote to deal with all the ugliness, is just to take that little walk, notice the hummingbird, notice the beautiful insect. It's there. And yes, we are growing a circle of compassion. We are grateful to connect with both of you. Super grateful for this beautiful book. I think it's going to do a lot for raising compassion and appreciation for our native wild song dogs. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I hope everyone will purchase this book, share it, give it. We look forward to promoting it. And thank you, Amelie and Dana, too, for connecting us all and reaching out, and Christopher for helping with this behind the scenes, and wishing everyone a beautiful Thanksgiving holiday. And thank you for your support of Project Coyote, too. All right.
Thank
Have
you.
a great rest of the day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.